building ETAC, which is a home of many important assets for the state of New York. The National Weather Service is here. We have Mesonet, so we have our meteorologists able to monitor in real time what is happening with the weather, and the weather has certainly taken a front row position in terms of our attention these days. I just want to take a moment to, first of all, acknowledge my extraordinary team with me. We have our Commissioner of Emergency Services, Jackie Bray. We have our Commissioner of Health, Dr. McDonald. We have Commissioner Sagos, our Commissioner of DEC, and they are on this nonstop because this continues to be a public health crisis, and we want to make sure that we are deploying all of our resources and help to anybody where we can. And the most important thing is information. The most important thing we can do is give people real-time information and let them know what they can be doing to protect the health of themselves and their families. So we've been acknowledging the fact that even today, after 6 days of notifications coming out from DEC, that people are aware that this is happening. That's this is an extraordinary event. It's unprecedented in terms of the source of the air contaminants that we're experiencing right now. That we are now talking about the fact that there still remains poor air quality across the state of New York. And I just want to give an update from our update yesterday. We are still seeing every place is unhealthy except for the Adirondacks. Now that might be a nice promotion for the Adirondacks. That is the only place with clean air in the state right now. We're seeing unhealthy air quality levels in Long Island, New York, Eastern Lake Ontario, Central New York, Western New York. And then we also have categories of healthy for sensitive individuals. So there's two different categories: unhealthy for everybody, unhealthy for people with sensitivities. That would be children, senior citizens, people with respiratory challenges. That'd be the upper and lower Hudson Valleys. We saw yesterday some very disturbing numbers in New York City. They've come down from the 400 level, but we should never get complacent and think that the 200 air quality quotient index is satisfactory. But right now we're experiencing 209 in Brooklyn, 207 in Queens, and 191 in the Bronx. And again, normal is 50. Actually, quite often in the state of New York, we have pristine air. It's normally about 35. Frequently it's 35, normal is 50. So we look to see weather improving over a few days. We're having the rain right now. Apparently the particles attach to the rain and they come down, but it does have a chance to cleanse them. I can have more explanation on that from Jackie Bray. But we still have spikes, individual spikes of over 400 in some regions. And the message is this is not over. We might get a little respite, but I don't want people to let down their guard and to become complacent about this, because we have to be prepared for the winds to shift. This is the unknown. We're tracking the large plume that is originating from primarily Nova Scotia, eastern, and also Quebec, but also, knowing that this is going to continue to have a negative impact on our health. I don't think there's a single person who hasn't felt something different. More frequent coughing and just a tightness in the throat, a watering of the eyes. And those are for people who are healthy. For those who have health conditions underlying already, it's a real challenge for them. And so we want to make sure that you're getting in touch with people. There are people in vulnerable communities, people who may not be checking their phone every couple of minutes for updates. They may not be seeing the news, and these are the people we're trying to reach out to. We want to make sure that people stay indoors. Yesterday, we asked schools and child care centers to cancel or postpone outdoor school activities. Again, let's talk about the school environment. It is very safe in our school buildings, particularly since during the pandemic, we used federal dollars and we're aggressively getting new filters in our schools and our child care centers, so they are much safer than children playing outside. We've been asked often, should we be canceling schools? If that means the kids are going to be outside, absolutely not. Just after school activities that are outdoor we're talking about. We're also having employers encourage them to make sure their own employees are taking precautions. Our own state workforce, we are tracking the air quality regularly, adjusting work assignments, and asking our commissioners to be very attuned to what's going on in the particular region they are. I will also say, this was brought up yesterday, this is our old friend. One you never want to see again, perhaps. But this mask can make a difference, not just outdoor, although I did see someone outside running on my way here wearing one of these masks. At least he was wearing a mask. But even indoors, if you have a situation where you don't have air conditioning, you have a situation where you're not feeling good inside, continue to put this on. This will make a big difference for people. We are distributing these. We did these during the morning rush this morning in New York City. We have them at state parks, MTA stations, Javits Center, bus terminals. So we're trying to be as open-minded to different opportunities to get these out to people, encouraging local governments. We did a Zoom call last night with all the county executives and the mayors across the state, letting them know that we have resources. We have storage depots where we have these available to them as well. So I wanted to also announce that we are announcing that we are sending Force Rangers to Canada, larger scale operations. I can have Commissioner Hisegos talk about that, but this is after I spoke to the Consul General yesterday to just touch base in Canada, how they're doing, and he was meeting with the Prime Minister. We offered more assistance. We'd offered previously, but they're now taking us up on it, so we're sending our first firefighters. We're joining a member of individuals from New Hampshire and Maine as well. They'll be departing from the Saratoga Fire Department on Friday and traveling to Quebec. They've asked for 7 people over the next 2 weeks. We can certainly change those numbers at their request. I also noted that President Biden is also sending firefighters. This is how we can deal with this, helping Canada get to these really remote areas. This is what the Consul General told me. He says, these are such remote areas, they're almost impossible to access. But containment's important to us. We want to get these under control, so I'm really proud that we're going to have New York citizens up there trying to battle these fires to help Canada, but also the collateral damage, which is the state of New York has been really hard hit by inferior air quality, unsatisfactory air quality. I know a lot of people are looking forward to the Belmont Stakes this weekend, so let me give a report on that. We have instituted enhanced measures to protect the horses, and the riders, and the spectators. Yesterday, we decided, in my direction, the Gaming Commission directed all tracks to stop workouts and trainings yesterday. That'll continue through today. And this morning, the measures are going to implement, if the air quality exceeds 200 at the facility, at any facility, there will be no racing. That's going to be canceled if the air quality is above 200. If the air quality is 150 to 200, only horses that pass an additional pre-race vet examination will be permitted to race. And we're closely monitoring this because this is a national phenomenon. People come from all over the country. It's huge for the local economy. And so we hopefully can get this going, but there's no assurance of what the weather's going to be, so it's going to be a last-minute decision, I'm sure. Still having significant delays at our airports. LaGuardia, in particular, downstate airports are definitely affected, but the Weather Service predicts that conditions should start to improve, and we're monitoring all the conditions at airports regularly. Here's my message. This is the new reality we're dealing with. I know a lot of people are stressed out after what happened during the pandemic. I want people to know this is a very different circumstance. We believe it'll be short-term, not long-term decisions will have to be made to keep people indoors. We're not making those decisions. This is personal. But we are taking climate change so seriously here in the state of New York. Always have been. And I've said before, we're the first generation to really feel the effects of climate change and the last one to be able to do anything meaningful about it. So that is why we're going to continue our fight against climate change. And you think about even the Clean Air Act, which we have. The reason we have a Clean Air Act enacted back in 1970 was the tremendous loss of life when we had the smog event in New York City back in 1966, and almost 170 people lost their lives because of the air quality at the time. So we're living in an era of extreme weather, statement of fact, and we're going to continue doing what we can to help do our part. We're doing our best in New York. We also need other states and the international community to join this fight as well, because I don't know what more evidence they need that we are in a crisis with our climate right now. Let's talk about what New Yorkers can do. I think about how to prepare. We do a lot of notices when it comes to major snow events, what people need to be doing to take precautions. But I think it's as simple as this. You don't need a snow shovel. You need to keep the masks in your house, and you need to keep your phone handy. And there is information on your phone in real time. We can get you the numbers. You can look up easily just on your weather app. You can go to our sites, but you can also just go to the weather map. Look for that number. That number appears on your app. It'll tell you what is going on Right now, we're at about 191, I believe, in Albany, at least it was a little bit earlier today. So keep an eye on that. And that should gauge your family activities. You should make decisions based on those numbers and really restrict yourself until you see those numbers starting to get into a safer zone. And it's all very clear for people. But again, not everybody has a phone. They're not watching it all day. There are residents out there who need our help. Again, similar to a snowstorm, check on your neighbors. Check on senior citizens who may not be on a cell phone, may not be watching the news. And these are some of the most vulnerable people we have in our state. So this is another opportunity to be a good neighbor, to check in on people. And also, in your own home and in your car, you can turn on the air conditioning, but be aware that you need to have the recirculate button on in your car and in your home, especially if you're using in your home one of the window air conditioners, because otherwise you're drawing in outdoor air right into your home, and that is dangerous. Turn on the recirculate the air so it stays internally, and make sure that your filters are clean. A lot of people don't replace them very much. They lose their effectiveness if you don't replace the filters and clean them regularly. So that's what's important to get out to everybody. For the meantime, really the best thing to do is just stay indoors. That way you won't have unintended health effects. You won't have the discomfort of having the smoke fill your lungs. And we're asked often about, are we seeing an increase in people going to emergency rooms? Are we seeing the health effects? It is still early. This has only been in full force in a very detrimental, dangerous way for the last few days. And it does take some time, but we have seen, Dr. McDonald's monitoring, we're not seeing a spike in people going to emergency rooms, but there are a couple hospitals, particularly in New York City, that are reporting more people stopping in. So I would like to ask Basil Sagos to talk a little more about the Mesonet, how we're doing our real-time monitoring of information. And we'll be happy to give a tour of that afterwards so everybody knows exactly how we're getting our information and making sure it gets out to the public as soon as possible. Basil Sagos.
Thank you, Governor. We are fortunate in New York to have one of the most robust weather monitoring programs in the country. That's the Mesonet program, which has over 126 stations around the state. That gives us an unparalleled view into the weather patterns, climatic issues in New York State. That then feeds into our response. We marry that to DEC's very robust 54-station monitoring program, where we're monitoring for all of the materials, all the pollutants that you see right behind you. That feeds into the federal system. So when you're picking up your phone, as the governor mentioned, or on airnow.gov, you're actually looking at the DEC monitoring data. All of that comes together to give us a good picture, and we're lucky to have SUNY Albany and the great Mesonet program here to help guide the state's response. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Hi.
A couple on-topic questions.
Yes, Congressman Cargo from News 10. I'm just asking, with field trips at the end of the year, what's your advice to parents and children?
Keep an eye on the numbers, first of all, and they can change. I mean, the rain is going to drive the numbers down somewhat, so it's a little hard to do long-range planning, but I would, if it's today, I would discourage outdoor field trips, absolutely. Try to make an adjustment to do something with the children indoors. I know it'll be disappointing for some, but it is not safe to be outside. It is just not safe, especially for younger children. So let's just keep monitoring the news. We'll make sure everybody has in real time when we get information. But right now, we would say if it's a week or so out, it's too early to say what the situation will be. But today, tomorrow, not a good idea to be out.
Governor, just this week, you put out requests to bid for contracts to get rid of unused pandemic materials. You're trying to get masks in people's hands right now because of this. At one warehouse alone, there's 55 pallets of unused, expired, apparently, masks. 33,000 pounds worth. How do we get to that point of having so much wasted material, especially at a point now where we could use it?
Well, if we all remember, there was a time we could not get our hands on these masks. And I would say when there's a public health crisis that is global in nature and we're relying on supply chains from places like China, we were not manufacturing masks in this country. The smart thing to do was to stock up, absolutely stock up. And I think a lot of people appreciate the fact that we were able to distribute masks to hospitals and nursing homes and to vulnerable communities and our assisted living homes. We were able to do that because we amassed a large inventory, and we do have some remaining. We have plenty of masks in this time of emergency where we're getting them out to people. So you have to be always prepared for the worst.
But again, is it frustrating that there's so much left over? I mean, there's 800 pallets of PCR test kits in one warehouse. There's 1,000 pallets of medical gowns. nearly 3 million pounds in one warehouse alone. Is that frustrating? There's so much waste?
One never wants waste. Obviously, this was all decided at a time when we are still going through the throes of a frightening public health crisis. And decisions are made to secure that much. Before my time, because when I became governor, we had come through a lot of the pandemic, but then it's ramped up again with Omicron. So I was glad we had that in inventory. I will never be. I'd rather be criticized for being over-prepared for a public health crisis than saying we just didn't even think about it, we weren't ready, and I'm sorry, those other states have more than we do because we weren't ready. That'll never be New York.
Governor, is there any sense of like the toll that the smoke has taken thus far, like increased visits to emergency rooms, deaths, traffic accidents? Any sense of any numbers that have come in?
Not seeing any numbers like that at this time. Dr. McDonald regularly monitors the emergency room visits. Not seeing a spike for respiratory illnesses at this moment. There are individual hospitals. A couple in New York State have reported an increase. It is early yet. This has a cumulative effect, especially for people who insist on being outside, day after day. At some point, it's going to have an effect on them, I believe. And so it's perhaps a little bit early for us to have a full assessment of the health impact. Dr. McDonald, is there anything else on that?
Let me just thank you, Governor. Let me just add this real quick. As a state health officer, I want people outside exercising. I really do. I want people out enjoying New York. It's interesting. My brother texted me just before this saying, "Good day for a run." I said, no. With the air quality today, it's not a good day for a run. Probably a good day to go to the gym, though. So, take that as a tip here. But we are monitoring this closely. Keep in mind, one of the things I think the reason why New Yorkers are responding to this so significantly is you can see this, right? Everybody noticed it, right? And unlike the pandemic, you really could see the impact. So I think that's why people said, I'm staying inside. If I'm going outside, I'm wearing a mask. Because you're seeing people wearing masks today. It's interesting.
Was there any, right here, was there any indication it would be this unhealthy? You said you had some heads up it was going to happen. Was there any notice that the numbers would look like this at this point?
No, there was not a way. 6 days ago when we started giving out our announcements to be prepared, we were monitoring, and I can have Jackie Bragg talk about how we started watching this. But these are unprecedented numbers. We would be concerned about a 200 level, which is where we are in much of the state today, 150, 200, 250. But for areas of our state, even yesterday, to have hit 400, that is extraordinary. And this is the worst air quality we've had at least since the 1960s when we started monitoring. And that was the time when it was pre-Clean Air Act, and companies and industry all over the state of New York were able to discharge pollution into the air, and we're as bad as that time. And that is what is frightening about the moment we're in right now. That is the shock value of this, but it's also a wake-up call that this is the new normal for what we're going to be dealing with. When I spoke to, I think I mentioned this yesterday, when I spoke to the Canadian Council, he said that the wildfires that they're experiencing, and they had them out west last year, we're experiencing it here in New York because they're in the east, but they've been going on for a long time. He said that their increase is up 1,400% firefighters in Canada. And I want to get a word out to people too. We could have our own wildfires here. Despite some rain today, it has been unusually dry. So please be smart. Do not be the source of the next wildfire in the state of New York when you're out camping or going on a picnic in one of our great state parks. And so everybody has to be very cognizant of the role that they can play in protecting themselves, but also helping us protect each other.
On that bigger
Governor,
scale,
you mentioned climate change and New York's efforts to take action on climate. The renewable developers and offshore wind developers have now asked the state to increase their subsidies to continue with their projects. Does that threaten New York's renewable goals and achievements? And do you support that petition to increase the subsidies?
We're looking at everything on a case-by-case basis. Ramping up this transition is critically important to all of us. I'm proud that we have a nation-leading Environmental Bond Act. I just launched the Environmental Bond Act, listening toward and listen to people across the state about where they think the needs are greatest. So we're very focused on this. We'll look at individual cases on what's happening. Obviously, since much of these decisions were made a few years ago, there have been supply chain issues and other issues that were perhaps were definitely unintended. So I want to make sure we continue leaning hard into those industries. Renewables, that's our future. Offshore wind, that's our future. Wind and solar, that's our future. And we're not stepping away from that because as we see today, with this dangerous situation we're here in today in 2023, we have no other option. We have to power through this and let the people of our state and our nation know that we're going to continue to lead, because failure is not an option. Thanks, everybody.
Governor, if
Thanks,
there are
guys.
rumors that there could be a housing bill before the legislature, would you
Exactly.
consider issuing a message of necessity?
Mesonet now.